Artificial turf from Water Savers Irrigation will provide a beautiful alternative to natural grass and other ground covers while enhancing your landscape. Our selection of turf designs ensures you have a year-round green lawn and a virtually maintenance-free surface, which affords more free time to enjoy your lawn every day. Installation is easy and guaranteed to last for years to come by following a few simple yet important first steps. By carefully following installation guidelines that can be downloaded from www.asgi.us, you will ensure a successful completion of your project, a beautiful, carefree lawn. Measuring material, excavate existing soil, base installation, alternative base installation, turf installation, infill installation, cleanup. Important first steps must be considered so your installation is optimal and executed correctly. One, measure your material for optimum use and needless waste. Most turf is 15 feet wide. Determine the best direction of turf for minimal waste. Make sure the layout has the turf all laying the same direction. Step 1 is to measure the length and width of area to be covered. Synthetic grass typically comes with a 15-foot width and lengths of 25 feet to 100 feet. Square and rectangular designs are easily measured, but with all installations, 6 inches extra product should be allowed for all edges. For abstract, varied, and irregular shapes, careful procedures should be followed by measuring width and distance of largest shape to be covered to determine the amount of turf needed. More detailed and specific guidelines can be found at www.asgi.us. 2. Excavate existing soil. Remove soil to accommodate the new base material. Determine the new finished turf height. Excavating the site to be covered with your new synthetic grass is the next step for proper installation. Remove all asphalt, concrete, rocks, and all other obstructions so you have an absolutely smooth and compacted surface that will properly accept the base installation and the final turf layer. To ensure enjoyment of your new landscape for years to come, prepare the site correctly and follow installation directions exactly. Next, you must determine turf height. Whether it's an inch below adjoining surfaces like walkways, patios, etc., or 1 to 3 inches above these areas, this will determine the amount of fabric and aggregate products to be put in place before turf is installed. 3. Base installation. Install geotextile fabric for low ground pressure, 4-inch minimum of a coarse drainage aggregate, 2-inch minimum of a fine aggregate. Compact in lifts. After surface has been excavated properly, the next step is to create the base layers before installing the synthetic grass. Over natural soil conditions, porous synthetic fibers are put on top of the excavated soil. Next, layers of aggregate are added to achieve the desired height of the cover. Following the steps as outlined on the ASGI website will give the help needed to complete the job. Alternative base installation. Cover the installation site with geotextile fabric. Layout panels. Lock together. Place screws around perimeter. Fabrics should overlap at least 6 inches. Stretch tightly and lock together with either staples or nails to secure them to the ground and in place. Place screws along the perimeter to ensure edges are defined and ground cover stays securely in place. 5. Turf installation. Install geotextile fabric for weed barrier. Unroll turf. Make seams. Pull turf tight to remove wrinkles. Trim edges. When you are ready to install the turf, set the direction of the grass grain to optimize the color. Lay the largest piece of grass first, then lay down the next piece, etc. Make certain you cut your turf cleanly and straight so materials fit together with little need for adjustments. The next step is to seam the pieces together and tack with 3.5-inch galvanized nails to hold in place and make certain seams provide a seamless look when infilling is completed. Each piece to be seamed should be pulled very tight to remove wrinkles. All edges should be trimmed and nailed or stapled in place. Make sure the turf is all laid with the pile facing the same direction. The general rule of thumb is when we flip this over, we're going to cut 2 to 3 stitch rows off in case of any yarn shrinkage. We are going to slide both pieces together. Next, we're going to do what's called dry fitting. This is where we loose lay the turf so we can get the seam how we want it before we put the seam tape down. Once we've gotten it like we want it, we're going to unroll the seam tape along the area to be seamed. Now we'll take the piece on your right and flip it over. If it stays down, you can leave it where it is, but if you're working in a small space, you can take one of your spikes and tack it down so it doesn't flip back over. With the other piece laying flat on the ground, we're going to pick this turf up and slide the seam tape halfway under so we know we have coverage on both pieces of turf that we're seaming together. Tack that seam tape where it is, about every 4 feet or so. Roll the other piece of turf over to reveal the seam tape by itself. Same thing on this side. If it's going to flip back over, take a spike and tack it down to hold it in place. Now we're going to apply glue to the seam tape. Using our notched trowel, apply a small amount of glue to the seam tape and spread out evenly. You see why we spiked it down. When you start troweling the glue on, you're going to be pulling the seam tape and you don't want it to move. Next, we're going to start at the very beginning of the seam and slowly lay both pieces of turf into the glue at the same time. Do not let the grass fibers fall over and get in the glue. Now, slowly work this all the way down the seam. By working both pieces in at the same time, you keep the glue off the face of the turf. This works the same as for a curved seam or a straight seam. Once the turf is in place, you're going to go back and make sure you've gotten the turf the same distance apart as when you dry fit it. After you do that, you're going to take and slightly press the turf down into the glue. Next, take a seam roller and roll the turf down into the glue, going back and forth diagonally across the grain in all directions. When you do that, you can't tell that it's 2 different pieces of turf. 6. Infill installation. Place nails around the perimeter to hold turf in place. Infill with sand or rubber. Use a drop spreader to place in the infill material. Broom infill material into grass. Following the simple directions will not only give your turf the look you desire, but also has practical advantages. The infill materials hold the turf in place and cover the backing and bottom of the turf blades to provide additional UV protection. Infilling gives your artificial turf the look you want for many years. Artificial turf from Water Savers Irrigation is 100% American-made. It will add beauty to your home and will help you solve problem areas where grass is not appropriate or is hard to grow. Just ask one of our friendly staff about the amazing product and get started on your project today.